Good morning, everybody. It is a beautiful morning, actually. Fall is here, finally. The cold, crisp air hit us last week, and it worked. It was great. And whoever's phone is going off, please silence all phones. You ever been in a church where they have a slide like that? Like, oh man. Yeah, silence the pastor, would you? Gotta love that one. Love. All right, so love's a big topic, right? Love. Yeah, anyway, today we're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about loving to serve. And this is interesting because we live in a culture that's sort of there's a lot of hypocrisies, dichotomies, things that don't seem to make sense. And one of those is the idea of we love to be served. We love fast food service, restaurant service, plumbing service, lawn service. We love service. Many of us are in the service industry. But if I was to say outside of a workplace environment to serve where you get money as a compensation, do you love to serve? Because on the dichotomy of that is then you walk away from that workplace and you come into an environment where you've been taught to serve yourself. Love yourself, serve yourself, engage yourself, enjoy everything for yourself. And then Jesus kind of stepped in there and he took all the money motivation and he sort of blew our little box of what it's all about. And he taught us how to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to serve him diligently and to love your neighbor as yourself. But in the process of doing that, he dealt with our issues of struggle. That we're not as generous as we think sometimes, and then other times we are. It's like, wow, okay. I was actually just thinking about this, obviously this week for the sermon, but you know, we call it that we need to have this healthy sense of skepticism. Actually, no, we need to have a good sense of discernment. Certainly, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to be good with management of our issues and stuff. Certainly, that's all Christian, the disciplines of where we spend our time, money, abilities. But when it comes to this issue of do we love to serve God in these areas, he showed us otherwise. It's a struggle. The section of scripture we're going to read about today talks about love, but it talks about love in the area of money and what to do about the money. And it's phased into three thoughts Jesus had about motivation and money. And he basically taught us that we should love to serve more than we love money. And you know, I'd like to think I wake up as a pastor and think, oh, I just would love to serve Jesus today. Depends on how much the sacrifice is, isn't it? Isn't it? It's like counting the cost, and all of a sudden you're realizing, wow, that's a lot of work. Or I don't have time this morning. These conversations go on, and we get stuck in the rut of not seeing his way of love. Love serves. So we're going to turn into Scripture and take a look at Matthew 6:19 through 24. Part of the Sermon on the Mount, which would have been fascinating to be there, by the way, because basically Jesus preaches this incredible message, and it just sort of like attacks the senses. Even this section is going to attack your senses. And some of you say, oh, I've heard this before. Maybe. When I read my notes from my professor Brooks, who was basically a Greek, he was a Greek professor primarily, and this is like one of the two sections he translated in his lifetime. This was a guy that could stand in front of you and say, I'm going to preach through John right now in less than 20 minutes, the whole letter. And he would hit every major highlight, every Greek theme, And you would feel like when he was done, you knew the book of John. Fascinating figure. He did a little workup on this, which I loved reading recently for your sake. But in this section, Jesus comes to the place of money, and he says this: do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, where mice, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. All of these thoughts refer to the right requirements for loving people and not money. To love rightly requires three things that he lays out here, themes, of which each is found here. Each paragraph here is centered around some simple, obvious situation in life, something where you're like, oh, I get that. I get that. The middle one, a little confusing for us, but I'll explain. Simple, right? Obvious situations in life that are easily understood and need no explanation or debate. What is a treasure? But with a few sharp words, the situation reveals the value we have in serving God and loving to do so and not serving money. To love rightly requires three things. Notice the first one. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moth and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. So what do you treasure? Your heart is the seat of your desires. What do you desire? What do you want? Every morning you wake up, it's a great question. What do you want? Notice what he's trying to explain to us here. If a follower, and this is from my professor's notes, I want to quote him. If a follower of Jesus works diligently to accumulate a treasure, it is because he's motivated by a plan, a goal, and a life ambition. Jesus' spirit in him guides his conduct in collecting treasures, so in the end, it may be said his heart is in his what? We always think it's like, oh, we should be thinking more. No. Where's your treasure? What's amazing about the human condition is you wake up with desires. You wake up with a heart somewhere. What do you really want? Of course, for a lot of us, it seems to change every morning, right? Better yet, what does he want? And do we really know, and is our heart really there? Could someone, get this one, could someone see a heart in you that serves God in a way that you're seeking to accumulate treasures in heaven? Could someone see that in you? So, because the point is here, your heart controls your conduct, just like your mind thinks and deliberates. And you'd sit there and think, well, of course, we use reasoning, blah, blah, blah. Actually, no. No, we understand reasoning. We can think through reasonably. We can do all those things, but we are driven by our habits. Our heart's desire drives us. Have you ever had a situation like, let's just, throw out something, Christmas impulse buying? Have you ever known, here's my budget, and then you see, I want that, and your heart says, I want that, and your head says, that's not in the budget, and your heart says, I could care less what you're thinking, and your heart wins the day. Right? It happens in relationships too. It's like your heart says, oh, he's really nice. I really, really like him. But your head says, yeah, but he's got these issues. And your heart says, hey, I don't care. I can live with that. And then your head says, no, you can't. And then your heart says, yes, I can. And then you get into the relationship and you realize your head was right. It's interesting how the heart really controls your conduct. So what do you want? Do you desire to serve and get excited about it? You know, we're going to put something out in the church where you can help serve in the church, but just serve in general, like loving others, love your neighbor, but also serving here, yes. But, you know, we should never have to pull and manipulate and feel like, you know, you have to do it. And by the way, you should never serve in a situation where you're feeling obligated versus passionate. You might move around and figure out, where does God want me? That's different. But this issue of the heart is very important to Jesus and to your pocketbook. He basically said here that the treasure in heaven is more valuable than your 401k. And I get it. I die, my money goes to my kids and the government. Wow, can't get around that one. My heart is wondering sometimes, do I love serving Jesus? Not just like it. I mean, that's the whole goal of our relationship with Jesus, is to love him. You realize that. It's not to get up and do something for him even sometimes. Sometimes he wants us to get up and just love him. Just like every spouse would love of that person in their life, is I just want them to love me. They don't have to go do all that stuff. I just want to know they love me from the heart, not from the head. Nobody wants to marry a robot. So the first point we're trying to say here is love starts serving in the heart. That's where it really starts. Don't think that love starts in some sort of other area of your life. Some people try to do stuff to show love. I get that. But that's not where it starts. It's got to start from the heart. And then next, Jesus teaches us, and this is the one that's less understood, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is the darkness? This is incredible, because now he says, first of all, that heart issue with your treasure, understanding the nature of heaven's treasures versus earthly treasures. And then now he says the eye transmits something very unique in your life. Your eyes transmit into your life your sense of reality. Have you ever met somebody where they've been on social media way too much, and they're on some sort of weird extreme thing, and they really start believing it? That weird whatever becomes their what? Reality. Why? Because it's true? No. Because they've allowed their eyes to transmit. Their eyes are not bright. Their eyes are faded. Anybody that hits 45, they begin to realize what ends up going over the age of 40. Your eyes. I brought some of these with me. And these are important, these glasses for me. I didn't start wearing glasses till I was 45. And what's interesting is the way it happened is that things started to look fuzzy. Even in the Bible, there was a blind man who was healed, and he saw people were like trees. And I don't know about you, but here's the thing. Initially, you're pretty stubborn. In fact, you're stubborn for a while when you have to put these on. And you keep telling yourself, I don't need these things, but you keep making these stupid mistakes where if you just had your glasses on, right? I would see it clearly. Well, when you don't see something clearly, what does that do to you? It puts you in danger. It makes you see things differently, in the wrong perspective. Listen, I love Monet's paintings, but that's not life. It's a skewed perspective of life. Jesus is saying here, your eye transmits your sense of reality. And we live in a visual generation. You realize that, don't you? We live in a visual generation. What are you putting through your eyes? Some people are way too much into junk on the internet and social media. What are you putting into your eyes? What does success look like for you? Let's hit that one. See, success is something we were told to be driven by since we were children. Well, in this section, success would be a heavenly treasure. But do you even know what heaven looks like? And would you know how to pursue that treasure in your life? Or is it like, I don't get it? I mean, I love the verse, but I wouldn't wake up my day and put an action step based on it. Or would you? Could you? Could you put actions into these? Yes, that's the reason Jesus taught them. And he sits there and he says, listen, if your whole worldview is built around what you see, what are you looking at? Right? Like you could see a child doing something that they shouldn't, and as a parent, you could sit there and say, oh, how cute is that? And it could become a very terrible thing. It could go south real quick. Or you could sit there and say, they always do that and keep putting these spanking things on them or whatever. What I'm saying is reality is often in the middle somewhere. Reality discerns what is right. And when I read Jesus and I read truth and I bring Jesus into my eyes and through my eyes and I see what is good to the soul, it is a light unto my life, not just my eyes. You see, your view of reality, if you build your life on a false sense of reality, your entire life will be filled with what? Errors. Somebody told you if you drank a lot, you'll be happy. And I've met so many happy drunks that ruin their marriages, destroy their families. You see where I'm going with this? You look at what you're feeding in your eyes. Examine what you have built your life on. You see, we build our lives on things, guys. Most Americans have built their lives on, what will make you what? So there's the goal of life. If the goal of life is solely happiness, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be happy, but listen to me. If it is the seeking of pleasure, what is that the definition of? Hedonism. And when we look back in history at hedonistic cultures, nobody looks back fondly. I can't believe they did that. Oh, that was so terrible. How could they abuse people like that? What do you think we become if that's the culture we are? You see, you got to see clearly what's going on around you, and you have to fight it. Because when you see clearly, there is a light that shines in you that is beyond belief through Jesus Christ. If we live in a false sense of reality, that entire life of yours becomes filled with errors. And it's amazing when you meet adults who have destroyed their lives and they wonder why. And I go, wow. Why you are in debt is not a fuzzy question. You can figure that one out if you use reasoning and you shine a light on it. Why you struggle in relationships is the same way. The issue is we've never dealt with reality of Jesus. We deal with reality through ourselves. I love C.S. Lewis's comment because it strikes me too, by the way. He said there's that little thing in you that people have told you about. Your parents said, your closest friends said it, that little thing in you that they said, you probably need to work on, da, 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 da. And then he says this statement, he goes, it's not a little thing. You made it a little thing because you have to put up with yourself. And that's true of life. I love my wife, not because she's always like passionate with me, but because she puts up with me. She forbears, she forgives. I find those to be just as useful. Not that you shouldn't have passion, by the way. But how do you see things? Do you see yourself in such a way in others that you could love your enemy, or were you raised to hate those who aren't like you? Examine what you built your life on. If you look back at what your education taught you, what your family of origin taught you, what your peer influences taught you, maybe you need to put on some different glasses that show you things more clearly. See, that's the second point of this. Love sees clearly and serves others in truth. In truth. And I got to be honest, in our culture, and I want to share this with you, I'm not saying you be a skeptic of everything you see. I'm saying you discern everything you see, because I find it increasingly hard to find the truth in many landscapes. And when knowing Jesus, I know how to filter out error. And I'm just telling you, it is hard to find the truth. And we make judgment calls. We love the armchair quarterbacking. We love the news cycle. We don't want them innocent until proven guilty. Let's just make them guilty, and we'll figure out the rest later. In fact, if you track court cases, there's a reason why we don't like it innocent till guilty. Because if you track the court cases, they take way too long to get through the court system. And here's the issue. The news cycle brings it up in 24 hours, and then you don't find the answer for 2 years. Who in here wants to wait for 2 years to see what happened with a news situation? And yet, if you track, which I have, the results of a judicial system that does process people, you find that typically, mostly, not always, it does a good job. But the problem is, I often find that the truth was different from the what? The hype. Over and over and over again, till there's a place where I say, you bought into it. It reinforced your narrative of life. It's what you saw. It's the way you want to see things. And there is good and evil. There is right and wrong. I believe in these things, but there is love your enemy. There is a position upon which we need to know the truth and apply it into our lives. Your perspective will control what you integrate into your life and what you commit to, which is the nature of the second point. Love has to see it clearly and serve others in truth. You know what's really cool is there's this thing I teach in marriage, premarital, is I say love actually sees more, and then it chooses to see less. Love literally looks at you, sees all the ugly things too, and all the beautiful things too. And it chooses to see the very nature of who you are. And then it chooses to love you, and it chooses to say, I will see less. I will cover over your struggles. I will be there for you. You see, that's love. But if you're not willing to see more, then you will be deceived. Because we all have weaknesses and strengths. And he brings us to the last point, fascinating point. No one can serve two masters. Either you hate the one and you love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. You cannot build your worldview around money. You cannot build your heart around money. Or actually, you can, but you will destroy your life. That's the sharp edge Jesus throws in here. Do you know anybody that's destroyed their life with money? You see, here he uses money to illustrate a master. This is interesting to me, a master in a person's life. If you've had any debt in life, have you ever felt like the bank, the debt, the money is your master? Have you ever had that feeling? That's the illustration he's trying to use here. Or if you've had a lot of money where you've had excess and you just let it, whatever I want, drive you. But then Jesus comes in here and he blows it all out. He says, listen, you can only have one. Which did you choose? Which do you serve? Which do you love? Well, how can you tell? Well, typically, your habits will reveal who you serve. You know, it's very hard to be materialistic and generous at the same time. Why? Because you keep wanting to give it away, not hold on to it. You keep wanting to help others and not help yourself. It's a habit in you, not just a moment. I know some people that, you know, they on the outside look very generous. They give something, but they gave it to feel good about themselves. And it was in the moment. It's not a lifestyle for them. It's not a lifestyle. You know how I can tell it's a lifestyle? What comes out of your paycheck on a regular basis? Where's it go? What's it devoted to? Your habits reveal who you serve. Which brings the third point. Loving God is the first act of service. If you can't sit there and say there is something more important than me, someone greater than me, something worthy of my time, worthy of my money, worthy of my skills, greater than me, then you can't get through those other two. You're going to see things through the lens that's different. Some people have heard of Hudson Taylor, and he was one of the first missionaries to China. And it was interesting how his whole story, how God laid it on his heart to go to China and etc. But one of the things he did, he was in England, and he was comfortable, like us. He was comfortable. And God laid it on his heart that these people need Jesus. And so he moved himself. He said, you know, I need to begin to understand who these people are. And of course, China at the time was very poor. It was oppressingly poor compared to England. He was from London area. And so he moved himself. And he moved himself to a place, and he says, on the outskirts of town, beyond some vacant lots, there was a double row of cottages bordered on a narrow canal, and it was given the name Drainside to the none too attractive neighborhood. The canal was just a deep ditch into which Drainside people, anytime you're called a Drainside person, you know you're in probably not a nice place. Drainside people, they were in the habit of throwing their rubbish to be carried away in part. And whenever the tide rose high enough for Hull at the seaport town, the cottages, like peas in a pod, followed the windings of the drain for half a mile or so. And he chose to give up his comfortableness to live there. He could have afforded better. In our culture, the way it works is this. If you can afford better, what do? You get better. What if you could afford to let it all go? That's why this section is so important, is when Jesus was confronted by wealthy people, which, by the way, we are, in the view of the world, we are. In the view of America, there are people that make more and less. But what's fascinating about this, guys, is he would give it all away, give it up. And when Jesus dealt with wealthy people, he confronted them with their wealth, not because it's all about the money. It's all about the treasure. It's all about truth, and it's all about God. And so Jesus confronted all those idols, and all the idols swim around the money. You see, the ultimate aim for me is to produce a love in you which springs from a pure heart, a good conscience, a genuine faith. There are even pastors out there who have forgotten this. And they've chased after a treasure that doesn't satisfy. You ever been in a church that's all about the what? That's not us. I've had people come to our church and they said, "Where do you give here?" Have you forgotten what you were called to? You see, some of us struggle with the reality of our lives because we've pursued darkness as though we would find light there. We're not seeing clearly what we've done to ourselves and to others around us. But life is and always has given us a choice to love and serve God or to pursue ourselves. Every morning you wake up to that. Loving God is the first act of service, where you sit there and say, I do believe there's something greater than me. I do believe there's something worth pursuing higher than I. I do believe it's worth everything I have. I believe. And in that moment, when you trust in Jesus Christ, it is called salvation. Not just because you end up going to heaven now, but because you even see what heaven looks like. Because you can't pursue heavenly treasures unless you know what? What's in heaven. Huh? That's the truth of it. Your heart is where your treasure is. And could somebody look at that life, like if you follow Jesus, could someone look at your life and say, I see them pursuing things that just aren't the things the world pursues? I love our town here. I love this area, by the way, this whole region. But people pursue their neighbors' stuff. They pursue the cultural norms. And I'm not saying these things are wrong. What I'm saying is when you pursue them, they become wrong because you fill your life with... Listen, when a family has 4 kids and 4 sports, you don't have time for God. Did you realize that? Let alone your spouse. When we start putting ourselves into these places of darkness, why? Because it's what you do. Do you? Who told you that? Culture told you that. Who framed your worldview? Culture. Jesus steps in and he messes with you. He sits there and he says, your treasure shouldn't be here on earth. It should be in heaven. You should be pursuing heavenly treasures. You got to know what they are and you got to know how to pursue them. Starts in the morning, finishes in the day. And then he says, you got to see things the way I see them, through truth, the reality of truth. You got to see yourself that way. You got to see others that way. You have to have a worldview that is likened unto Christ, a Christ-like worldview. And then, yes, and then you place me first as an act of service and love, and you enjoy it. And by the way, let me just share with you the end this with joy. I can't tell you, every morning, I don't know how I wake up. Sometimes I can wake up like I didn't rest. I did rest, blah, blah, blah. My body speaks one language, blah, blah. And then I got to get to my heart. I need a devotion with God. I need to spend time with God every morning. You know why? Because I get messed up. I wake up weird. Do you ever have someone like a weird dream? Like, where in the world did that come from? And you just got to get your soul right, and you just got to focus. Where do you need to focus? Think about it. And, of course, I know temptation is to focus on the coffee. But it's like I just got to get my focus central to the same theme. God. I've got to focus on God this morning. I've got to focus on God to love my wife right. Because I'm feeling kind of funky, and I'll probably say something I shouldn't to her. Every morning you wake up, The first act of service to God is to love him and give him your heart and let him center you through his word, in prayer, his spirit, and let your life be focused on him for that day, whatever that day brings. Whatever. And so many people, they say, well, I don't feel like I accomplished much that day. Were you filled with the Spirit and did you walk with Jesus? Well, yeah, you accomplished everything. Yeah, but I didn't have like a Taylor Swift day. You see, we compare ourselves. We compare ourselves to other people, other incomes, other regions, other areas, other lifestyles. And then what's the one person we should compare ourselves to? That's it. There's nobody else. Some people go gaga over famous people. They're just people, and I like them, and I love them, and I'll love them like I love the next person. But you have to realize every time you walk in a room, if you have the Spirit of God in you, you already know the most famous person in the world. The question then becomes, are you representing them as an ambassador? You have more to give than they could ever dream. But we don't think that way. We compare ourselves. Oh, they dress nicer. They look nicer. How bad is your lens? Are you impartial? Do you show no favoritism? Do you love everyone? And most of all, do you love God first? If you don't know Jesus today, that's your first step of faith. Trust in Jesus for your salvation. If you do know Jesus, ask yourself, where's my heart? Where's the treasure of my heart? Where are my eyes? How clearly do I see the truth? And where is my devotion? Where is the act of love to serve God first, every day? And last of all, I would include, what are the habits that keep you there? Because a habit will keep you looking to heaven. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much that you gave us life and eternal life. Life here, life to come, life beyond our imagination. There is no normal day when we have your Spirit in us. There's just a beautiful day. As much as fall has come upon us, your Spirit ushers a beautiful fall and love in our lives, and you make our lives beautiful. You help us to love others that in our nature, in our flesh, in our comparisons, we would tend to hate or not love at all. You teach us to care in such a way as that we seek the best of others, the salvation of others. But Father, I pray every treasure in this room, every heart in this room, I pray that they would seek their treasure in heaven and that they would show that here on earth. In your name, amen.